Okay, look at this image. These massive, massive human figures just carved straight out of a cliff face in the desert. It's one of those defining images of ancient Egypt, isn't it?
It really is. Instantly recognizable. We're talking about Abu Simbel, of course.
Exactly. This historic site way down in Upper Egypt,
Hmm.
and these twin temples built by Pharaoh Ramesses II. We've got some fantastic source material here covering its deep origins, what it meant in Egyptian belief, and then this just incredible modern rescue story.
Right. It's quite a journey.
So in this deep dive, our goal is really to unpack all of that, pull out the essential story of Abu Simbel so you can really get a handle on this amazing place.
It's a story that really spans millennia, from the height of pharaonic power and religious expression, then centuries lost under the sand, right up to this global effort that was almost as ambitious as building it in the first place. We can trace that path.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then. The builder, Ramesses II. He's from the 19th dynasty, so we're talking, what, 13th century BC?
Yeah, roughly 1200s BC. I mean, truly ancient, a very long and significant reign.
And the location itself, it's pretty striking, isn't it? It's not near, like, a major city today.
No, not at all. Abu Simbel is way down south.
Yeah.
It's in the Aswan Governorate, Upper Egypt, actually quite close to the border with Sudan now.
Right on the bank of Lake Nasser.
Well, yes, now it is. Originally, it was on the west bank of the Nile River itself. Lake Nasser came much later, obviously. It's about 230 to 300 kilometers southwest of Aswan, depending how you measure. And the key thing is, these temples weren't built in the usual sense. They were carved directly out of the sandstone cliffs there.
Let's focus on the big one first, the Great Temple.
Okay, so the Great Temple is primarily dedicated to Ramesses II himself, alongside the main state gods like Amun, Ra-Horakhty, and Ptah. But Ramesses is definitely front and center.
And that facade, it's unforgettable.
Absolutely. Those four colossal seated statues of the pharaoh. Each one is just enormous, about 21 meters, so maybe 69 feet tall. Yeah. And if you look closely, down by his legs and feet, there are smaller figures carved.
Who are they?
They represent members of his family. His principal wife, Queen Nefertari, his mother Mutui, and some of his sons and daughters. It emphasizes the dynastic line, you know.
And inside, the carvings inside tell a specific story about his power.
Very much so. The interior halls are covered in reliefs and sculptures. They're like ancient propaganda, really. They commemorate Ramesses II's achievements, his leadership, especially his supposed victory at the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites.
Kadesh. That comes up a lot with Ramesses II.
He does. He wanted everyone to remember it as a great personal triumph, even though historically it was probably more of a strategic draw. But the reliefs here show him as the heroic warrior favored by the gods.
But he didn't just build this huge temple for himself, did he? There's another one right next door.
That's right, the small temple. It's just a short distance away.
And who was that one for?
This one is dedicated to the goddess Hathor, often shown with cow horns, or as a cow, and, significantly, to Ramesses' chief wife, Queen Nefertari. It's quite unusual for a queen to be honored on such a scale, almost equal to the pharaoh.
So that shows her importance.
It really does.
Yeah.
And like the Great Temple, the inside of the small temple is covered in these beautiful, detailed hieroglyphs and reliefs, depicting Nefertari alongside Ramesses making offerings to the gods.
Okay, to really get why someone would undertake such a massive project, carving mountains essentially, we need to understand the ancient Egyptian worldview, right? Your sources stress how religion was just everywhere.
It was absolutely central. You can't separate ancient Egyptian society, politics, or art from their religious beliefs. It wasn't just a Sunday thing. It shaped everything.
Put the pharaoh as this god-king figure.
Exactly. The pharaoh was seen as divine, a living god on earth, and religious needs, they heavily guided state decisions, how the country was run.
And their focus on death and the afterlife seems huge, too.
Immense. The belief in immortality, in continuing life after death, was fundamental. That's why they put so much effort into things like mummification. The idea was to preserve the physical body, the kia, or life force, needed it to survive in the afterlife.
And the pharaoh's role in all this cosmic machinery was critical.
Absolutely critical. He wasn't just a political leader. He was the intermediary, the connection point between the gods and humanity. He was responsible for maintaining Manat.
Manat. What's that exactly?
Its core concept. It means something like truth, balance, order, justice, the proper functioning of the universe. Keeping Ma'at ensured the Nile flooded predictably, the crops grew, the sun rose, everything stayed in harmony.
And that was the pharaoh's job.
That was his primary divine duty. The prosperity and stability of Egypt were seen as directly linked to the pharaoh's relationship with the gods and his ability to uphold Ma'at. He was considered the son of the sun god Ra, the living embodiment of Horus. He literally bridged the gap between the mortal world and the divine realm.
So these giant temples like Abu Simbel weren't just, showing off.
Well, there was definitely an element of projecting power and prestige, but it was deeply tied into that religious framework. Building on such a colossal scale was a statement about the pharaoh's divine status, his power to impose order on the landscape itself, reflecting the ordered cosmos he maintained.
Like a physical manifestation of Mat.
Precisely. Even small artistic details, like, say, how a king holds his fist, could symbolize control over chaos or enemies. Everything had meaning within that religious context.
So these amazing structures carved right into the rock, they stood there for centuries, but then what happened? They sort of disappeared.
Over a very long time, yes. The desert is relentless. Gradually, shifting sands piled up against the temples, burying the lower parts, eventually covering much of the facades. They were lost to the outside world, hidden beneath the dunes.
And damaged, too.
Yeah, the desert environment is harsh. Wind erosion, basically sand blasting, abrasion from trapped particles, plus the huge temperature swings between day and night, all that took a toll on the exposed stone over the centuries.
And they just stayed hidden. For how long?
For centuries. Until the early 19th century. They were rediscovered, or at least brought to European attention, in 1813.
By who?
By a Swiss explorer, Johann Ludwig Burckhardt. He was traveling the area, heard local stories, and managed to find the top part of the Great Temple's facade sticking out of the sand. Imagine seeing those giant heads half buried.
Incredible. Okay, so fast forward quite a bit to the 1960s. Abu Simbel faces a totally new kind of threat, a modern one.
Yes, a huge one. The construction of the Aswan High Dam.
This was a massive project for Egypt, right? For development.
Oh, absolutely. The High Dam was designed to control the annual flooding of the Nile, store water for irrigation, protect against drought, and generate enormous amounts of hydroelectric power. Huge benefits for the country.
There's always a but.
But building such a massive dam created an equally massive artificial lake behind it, Lake Nasser. And the rising waters that this new lake were going to flood a vast area of Nubia, including the site of Abu Simbel.
So the temples were literally going to be underwater.
Yeah. Exactly. Drowned. Gone forever. And it wasn't just Abu Simbel. The dam project had other consequences, too. Things like increased soil salinity downstream, changes to fisheries, coastal erosion, and the rising water table threatened other monuments further north, too. But for Abu Simbel, the threat was direct inundation.
That must have caused international alarm.
It did, a huge outcry. And it led to something really quite remarkable.
The rescue operation.
Yes, an unprecedented international campaign, spearheaded by UNESCO. This wasn't just one country helping Egypt. It was a truly global effort.
How global?
The international campaign to save the monuments of Nubia, launched in 1960, ran for 20 years. Hundreds of countries got involved, contributing money, technology, expertise, people. It was a multilateral cooperation on a scale never really seen before for heritage.
Okay, but how on earth do you save temples carved out of a mountain from a rising lake? You can't just, put a roof over them.
No,
Yeah.
They had to move them, the entire complex.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. It was an absolutely epic feat of engineering. They had to meticulously, carefully saw the temples, both the Great Temple and the Small Temple, into enormous blocks.
Saw them up, like giant Lego bricks.
Sort of, yeah. Thousands of blocks, some weighing as much as 20 or 30 tons each. It had to be done with incredible precision so they could be reassembled perfectly.
That sounds terrifyingly risky.
Hugely risky. Then, these massive blocks were lifted, transported up the cliff, and painstakingly reassembled on higher ground.
How much higher?
About 65 meters, vertically higher, and roughly 200 meters back from the original riverbank, safely above the future level of Lake Nasser.
Wow. Wow. Who did this work?
It was a consortium of international archaeological and engineering firms. Teams from Italy, Germany, Sweden, France, Egypt itself. About 40 technical missions from 5 continents were involved over the course of the entire Nubian campaign.
And it wasn't just Abu Simbel they saved.
No, the campaign rescued or relocated 22 major monuments and complexes in total, including the equally famous temples on the island of Philae, which were also dismantled and moved to a nearby higher island.
What did something like this cost back then?
The total cost for the entire Nubian campaign was around US $80 million in the currency of the time, which is a staggering amount.
And countries chipped in.
Yes, remarkably, about half of that, $40 million, was donated by around 50 different countries. It was a powerful symbol of shared cultural responsibility.
So this whole rescue, it was more than just saving some old
Oh,
buildings.
much more. It was seen as this epic technical achievement, yes, but it also set a completely new precedent for balancing modern development with protecting world heritage. It showed what international cooperation, coordinated by an organization like UNESCO, could achieve.
And it had a lasting impact.
Absolutely. The success and the sheer scale of the Nudian campaign were actually a major driving force behind the development and adoption of the 1972 World Heritage Convention, the framework that protects World Heritage Sites globally today. It showed it was possible and necessary.
Which led to Abu Simbel itself getting special status.
Exactly. In 1979, the whole cluster of Nubian monuments from Abu Simbel to Philae was inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List, recognizing their outstanding universal value and, of course, the incredible story of their rescue.
So if you go to Abu Simbel today, what do you actually see? Where are the temples now?
You visit them in their relocated position. They sit on an artificial hill, carefully constructed to mimic the original setting, overlooking the vast expanse of Lake Nasser. You can walk right up to them, go inside, see the reliefs.
Is there anything explaining the move?
Yes, there's usually a visitor center nearby. Often they show a film or have displays that explain the whole relocation process, which is pretty fascinating to see after you've stood in front of the actual temples. Helps you appreciate the scale of it.
And getting there, it's still pretty remote, right?
It is. Most visitors fly in from Aswan or even Cairo for a day trip or overnight stay. Or you can go by road from Aswan in a guided convoy or tour bus.
How long is the drive?
It's a fair distance. Takes about 3 to 4 hours each way across the desert. Generally, independent self-driving isn't allowed for tourists on that road.
And best time to go? Probably not summer.
Definitely better in the cooler months, generally October through April. Summer in Upper Egypt is incredibly hot, especially out in the open desert like that.
It really is an amazing arc, isn't it? You go from Ramesses II, this powerful pharaoh, expressing his divinity and might by literally carving mountains, to those same monuments being swallowed by the desert sands for centuries, almost forgotten.
Rediscovered almost by accident.
Then rediscovered, yeah. And then facing this totally modern threat, the rising waters, only to be saved by this unbelievable global effort, this feat of engineering and cooperation.
The scale of it all is just mind-boggling. Both the original creation, the sheer ambition and labor involved in carving those temples initially, and then the modern rescue, the precision and technology needed to dismantle and move them piece by giant piece.
It really speaks to something enduring, doesn't it? This human desire to create something lasting, something that defies time, and then also our ability sometimes to defy even the landscape or changes we ourselves make to it to protect that past.
It does. It's quite profound when you think about it.
And that rescue, that huge international coming together. What do you think that tells us now about how we value the past and maybe our shared responsibility for preserving it, even across cultures and millennia? Makes you wonder, doesn't it?